hearing us and seeing us okay. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name's Samantha Hooker. I'll be the moderator for today's Eval Café. If you haven't joined us, the cafe is a longstanding speaker series hosted by the Evaluation Center at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. The series goal is to encourage a deeper dive into all things evaluation. In a few minutes, I'll go ahead and add a link to the chat so you can sign up for our Eval Cafe mailing list if you're interested. That way, we'll be able to contact you, let you know about upcoming presentations, and share recordings of our past presentations. Before we begin, we do take a moment to acknowledge the history of the land that we're located on. Western Michigan University is on ancestral lands of the Three Fires Confederacy, which was historically occupied by the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. We honor their stewardship and connection to the land. Today, we're very excited to be joined by Kurt Wilson, president of EffectX. Kurt has a background in nonprofit evaluation and consulting. I was going to go more into his bio, but I'm sure he'll share, so I don't want to be duplicating his presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, I'll keep an eye on the chat, so you can go ahead and enter them in the chat, and we'll ask them to Kurt as we get to the question breaks. You can also use the reaction button. If you'd like to raise your hand, you can come, off mute and ask your question that way. And there's also a Q&A box that you should see at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on where your control bar is, and you can answer questions there. So we try to make it easy for you to go ahead and engage with us and ask questions. And with that said, I will go ahead and hand it over to Kurt.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. I am delighted to be able to present today at Eval Café. I've presented a few times in the room there back when I was a student at Western Michigan University. And so this is my first time presenting virtually. But I've been thinking about this idea of human-centered evaluation pretty much since I was a student. And we'll get into that. So I'm just delighted to be able to present here today. So as brief introductions, as Samantha mentioned, I am Kurt Wilson and got a PhD in evaluation, the IDPE program at Western Michigan University, and have been an evaluation consultant for about 15 years. So started EffectX while I was a student and am now working with Dr. Aaron Cates, also a graduate of the ADPE program. He's in the room there, and so we'll be able to answer more technical questions. Aaron is an expert on many levels, so I'll defer to him if some questions come up. So that's our brief intros. I'd like to do a little introduction of all of us, though. This is a trick. If possible, if you could come off mute so that we could see your hand. This would be just a quick little overview of your own experience. So from a human-centered standpoint, I'm always interested in the humanity of the people that are in the room. So I'd love to know if you have if you have a pet, go ahead and raise your hand. If you have a pet at home. All right. See, tons of pet owners. Wonderful. Great. Thank you. All right. Good. So next question. If you have any children, go ahead and raise your hand. All right. Number of parents in the room as well. Wonderful. Excellent. I am an empty nester, but children have figured heavily into a lot of my thinking, so might be referencing them today. Okay, if you have experience with developmental evaluation, go ahead and raise your hand. This is an approach developed by Michael Quinn Patton. So, okay, few hands. Excellent. Great. How about if you have experience with empowerment evaluation by David Fetterman? Any experience with empowerment evaluation? Gwen, yep, see your hand. Not as much in empowerment. Great. How about indigenous evaluation approaches? There's there, Kamal. Excellent. Okay, well, good. Well, that helps orient us a little bit to who's in the room. I appreciate that. You can certainly we'll get into the uh, the goals for today. So really, I like to have a clear outcome being an evaluator. So the clear outcome for today is really to inspire one practical idea to help you engage the complex human dimensions within your own context. So that's the hope for today is that you'll come away with at least one practical idea for engaging human dimensions in the work that you do, and we'll provide lots of options. So the agenda, I'd like to start from a broad perspective. So we'll start from the an evaluation frame and kind of frame this idea of human-centered evaluation from a variety of different perspectives. So after the framing, we'll talk about how to get started in a more conceptual way, the mindset and the posture of a human-centered evaluation approach or lens, and then we'll end with getting started related to methods and tools. So really practical toolbox related to human-centered evaluation and how some of these ideas can be practically put into service. And the methods and tools that we'll be presenting, all of them have been methods and tools that Aaron and I have used in actual evaluation situations. So we're not talking about new ideas that we have. We're talking about actual things that we've been using. So that's the broad agenda for today. And as Samantha mentioned, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I will pause at each of these breaks to take questions on that section so that we don't have to wait necessarily to the end. I love the interaction. It's a little tough with looks like 52 people online, so we'll have to manage that, but would like to have as much interaction and discussion as possible. Great. So let's get started with the framing and really kind of the needs and the foundations that led to the thinking of this idea of human-centered evaluation. So the first one, in terms of essentially the need, is the what occurred to me is that traditional evaluation really is effectively program or project centered. And so when you think about human centered, it's like, well, what's the alternative? And the alternative is really a project center or a program centered. And you see the quote there. Michael Patton has said many times, I've heard in lots of different workshops, evaluation grew up in the projects, and that kind of quip is around this idea of evaluation was about evaluating projects. And so the unit of analysis and the real focus of most evaluation has been project focused or the program focused. And there's not like anything, there's trade-offs associated with that. It's not like that's a wrong approach, but there's certain limitations to that as regards to helping and contributing to the actual lives of the participants, and that's what we'll get into. And you see on the screen there the one clear implication, and one of the things that I've been wrestling with is if the program or the project is the focus, then the human variability and the inner lives of the participants themselves are effectively noise that needs to be filtered out with experimental design and rigor. And this is precisely how lots of evaluation traditional evaluation methods are designed. Random control trials are you randomize the participants that are there so that you can effectively wash out any of the variation of the participant experience themselves, so that you can appropriately focus on the program. And again, it's not like there's anything wrong with that. There's lots of good reasons for that sometimes, but my argument is that there's other times where understanding the variation and understanding what's happening with the participants is also important. And so that's one of the needs that led to this idea of human-centered evaluation. Another piece of the frame in terms of the inspiration for me, as I mentioned, there's this need related to program focus versus a human focus, but also Chris Corrin in the IDPE program said many times, anything can be evaluated. And I remember actually sitting right in that room when he was saying that, and so my head started turning, and it's like, oh really? What about hope? What about love? What about faith? There's all these kinds of intangible things that are very real in our human experience, and so I started wrestling with how exactly could those be evaluated, and is it appropriate to evaluate them? And so those that inspiration was really a key piece of my thinking. And then Michael Patton, in the very first page of developmental evaluation, has this quote that the great unexplored frontier is evaluation under conditions of complexity. And this idea of evaluation under conditions of complexity was also a real inspiration for human-centered evaluation, because there's few things that are more complex than our human lives. The interconnection, the evolving change over time, the way that we respond to different situations at different times, everything about our human lives is extremely complex. From and so thinking about how to evaluate our how to evaluate humans and human experience and human lives is, to me, was like a key piece of evaluating complexity that I was super interested in exploring. So taking up this challenge from Michael Patton was another real inspiration for this. So when it comes to how I think of this, one of this metaphor here, this picture is really probably the fastest way to explain it, and that is, if we think of a tree, there's the visible parts of the tree, and in a lot of ways, this I would equate to the objective side of life. And there's all kinds of important things happening in the visible parts of the tree, especially the fruit. So if we think about, again, from a program standpoint, all of the programs I've ever evaluated want to know, is our program making a difference? Are we actually changing lives? That's a very important question, and to me that would be similar to the fruit of a fruit tree. And this is why we plant fruit trees. It's we want the fruit, and so it's so again, that's an important thing to understand, and an important thing to be able to evaluate, is that the quantity and the quality of the fruit produced. But from but as I've wrestled with this over time, I realized that the fruit doesn't just spring out of the branch. The fruit is connected to a whole system, and especially a invisible root system that we don't see. That's super important to the quantity and the quality of the fruit. And this, my argument would be, this is the invisible or the subjective domain of the participants, and what's going on within the lives of the participants. And so the visible and the objective is definitely important and valuable, but it's not the whole story. It's part of a complex system that includes the invisible or the subjective. And so you see, there's lots of important visible outcomes that we traditionally are comfortable evaluating. And to me, a human-centered approach is widening the aperture to be able to look at the intangible as well. And so looking at the outcomes or the contributing factors in that intangible, invisible dimension. So things like motivation, hope, love, trust, or faith, or in any number of other kinds of intangible things are very important. And again, I would argue are effectively the root system that is providing the nourishment and key contributions to the quantity and the quality of the visible and objective fruit that is produced. You see, I starred faith there in particular because one of the things I've learned more recently is that 73% of the total nonprofit giving in the United States is given to organizations with a religious affiliation. So this is churches as well as faith-based organizations like, say, the Salvation Army, or rescue missions, or Compassion International. There's lots of different examples of faith-based organizations. And so the idea of faith, which in a lot of ways is the squishiest and most intangible of the intangibles, is actually central to the identity of over half of the nonprofit giving in the United States, and so again um, from a framing standpoint, the idea of being able to effectively think about and include intangibles in our work, I think, is not just a small challenge and a niche kind of need. It's something that's actually needed in lots and lots of situations, and so this has been another piece of the motivation. This metaphor really leads to a couple of conclusions. And this one, the first one would be that objectivity is great, but it needs to stay in its lane. The Again, the if we agree with this premise that the objective and visible world is inherently interconnected to a subjective and an invisible world, then that broader system needs to be respected for all of the different components. And so certainly objectivity and the objective world is important, but it's not the whole story. And we need to be able to address both. And again, traditional evaluation and so much of the reading I've done really prioritizes the visible and the objective and ignores or denigrates anything subjective. And that, to me, is one of the challenges that human-centered evaluation is working to address. The second question really gets at rigor, and that is related to when we talk about evaluating subjective kind of experiences, like how do you do that with any kind of rigor? And I've had lots of discussions about this, and there's some real challenges there. But as I've wrestled with it, I've realized that the evaluating subjective outcomes or subjective experience really follows the same path to rigor as evaluating objective outcomes. So it's not like the process is any different. The evaluand, or the thing that's being evaluated, is certainly different, but the ways that we do conduct our work and the ways that we think things through in a rigorous objective way would be the same kinds of ways that we could think things through in a rigorous subjective kind of experience. So it's not like it's a whole different world, and we'll get into that when we're talking about the methods. We'll be able to talk more about rigor, but I wanted to address that right at the top, because I know that evaluation with rigor is definitely an important piece of our identity as evaluators. So anytime we talk about changing things or new methods or that type of thing, I know questions of rigor really come up. So, so finally, in terms of the inspiration and perspectives, you heard me ask about three of these: developmental evaluation, empowerment evaluation, and indigenous research methodologies. I would say those are three really main streams that have informed this thinking around human-centered evaluation. In a lot of ways, I would see that human-centered essentially is building on the foundation that these established approaches have laid, and in a lot of ways are taking the next step that these approaches have established. On the left there, you see people-centered evaluation theory in action. This new directions for evaluation. I got my copy in the mail last Friday, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so close to human-centered. It's talking about people-centered, and so I've skimmed some of it to see, like, are they saying the same thing? Is it identical to human-centered? And it's not actually identical, but we're really it's really talking about similar kinds of goals, similar kinds of concerns, and there's a lot of ways that human-centered is very similar to what is outlined in this new directions issue. So I did want to note that right at the top as well, because I'm sure a number of you would be familiar with that and would be wondering, is this the same thing or is it different? So those are the four, I would say, really the four inspirations and kind of streams that have contributed to the thinking around human-centered evaluation. So let me take a deep breath and pause here. If there's any questions on this on the framing or inspiration? I'd love to address those now. And then we can get into more of the practicality.
Yeah. And just a reminder, you can put questions in the chat. You can use the reaction button to raise your hand and come off mute if that's easier for you.
Stunned silence. All right. Great. Well, I'll keep going then. But certainly, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, and we can address those. Or there'll be plenty of time for discussion at the end as well. So this next section with that kind of framing that was provided. This next section, I really want to get into the mindset and the posture of a human-centered evaluation frame. So how does this approach change how we think about evaluation, and how does it kind of change the posture that we have as evaluators in these situations? So, in terms of the mindset, the image to me, from a human-centered standpoint, that has been really generative is this idea of an adaptive, essentially central nervous system kind of approach to evaluation. So, if you think again in terms of contrast, the traditional program-centered approach is really working to understand predictability and control. So is the program efficient? Does it work? And we're wanting to measure observable change and progress. And so there's very often, sometimes I've kind of felt like like a mechanic trying to diagnose a program to see, is this engine running well? How efficient is it? How effective is it? Those kinds of questions. A human-centered approach is really much more adaptive, and it's really looking to inform change over time. So in that regard, it's very much like developmental evaluation, and also non-Western approaches that are understand the human experience as embedded within nature, embedded within history, embedded within other kinds of contexts that really inform how things happen. So a human-centered approach is really trying to come at it from the idea of this kind of very embedded, relational, adaptive, organic kind of framework. And so this idea of a central nervous system, to me, if we think of our own central nervous system, it does several things simultaneously. It's how we sense the world around us. I can feel how hot my teacup is. I can sense where I am in space because of balance. And so there's all kinds of sensing going on. And I think at its best, evaluation provides that kind of a sensing kind of function for programs and for the people that we serve. We can use surveys and focus groups to listen and to hear. We can talk to review other kinds of existing data to understand the experience that people are having. And so there's a sensing dimension to evaluation, and that's very important. And then what is sensed is communicated through our nerves to our brain, where there's decisions are made. Adaptive response is decided. We decide what we're going to do with our mind, and so there's essentially a sense making or a processing that happens with our central nervous system, and I think that's again a great metaphor for human-centered evaluation, where the data that is collected from a sensing standpoint is processed, is metabolized into decisions, perspectives, and then those decisions are communicated back out through the same channels and that informs the adaptive response. So I can move my hand if it's getting too hot. I can adjust my posture if I'm going to fall over. And so there's ways that we adapt to our environment over time. And so to me, that would be the ideal kind of metaphor for a human-centered approach would be, can we as evaluators help organizations build a living central nervous system that can have these same kinds of functions? And so there's a large foundation here in Colorado that I've been working with for the last several years from this perspective, and they actively talk about their central nervous system, and we have sense making discussions where we work together to metabolize the data that's been collected in the previous quarter, and this metaphor and this approach has the real advantage of breaking down the silos between the evaluation department or the evaluation functions and the rest of the organization because if in a traditional sense, you have your evaluation department that does their evaluation things, and then you have everyone else, and it's sometimes difficult to integrate those. Whereas if you approach it from this idea of look, this isn't a separate function. This is the central nervous system that's embedded and in everything that we do. That helps give people a perspective to engage it and to understand their own role in again the sensing, in the sense making, and in the adaptive response that comes out of that. And it's again with this foundation, it's been very exciting to watch over the years how all of the staff members are starting to embrace their own part of the evaluative process, understanding it from this perspective. So again, as you see, this is inspired by empowerment evaluation, the idea that evaluation can empower individuals. Empowerment evaluation traditionally has been having the participants, having a group of participants engaged in an evaluation project. This idea takes that to the next step, where it's fusing empowerment evaluation with developmental evaluation and saying all of the staff has a role in the ongoing sensing and sense making and adaptive response, and that's an integrated organic part of the holistic organization. So this is the mindset that a human-centered approach comes from, and has been certainly exciting so far in the organizations I've been working with. This leads to a different kind of posture as the evaluator, and the posture to me that has really resonated the most is this idea of an engaged gardener. As an evaluator, how am I the scientific technician with a clipboard saying you did a good job or a bad job? Sometimes I've definitely been on those projects, or am I coming at it from a place of objective remove, where it's like I'm on the other side of the one-way mirror, and I'm watching the action happen, but I'm taking notes, and I'm at this remove. Again, some of the projects I've been on have kind of had that kind of posture. The human-centered approach to me is much more engaged, and it's looking to essentially create the conditions for flourishing, create the conditions for the vitality of the organizations that I'm working with, and so it's much more engaged. And given the fact that it's embracing complexity, humility, and is a real key piece of this. We're learning and adapting as we go all the time, and so there's the need for a very humble kind of posture, and then constant listening and adaptation are other important dimensions of the posture of a human-centered evaluator. So that really gets at some of the important intangibles of this idea of human-centered evaluator, the mindset, some of the key metaphors, as well as the posture. So, so when it comes to rigor, which I know is often a real question, I've kind of started to think in terms of trade-offs that need to be made. And I was thinking of friends of mine that like say cook jam or bake pies. Do they sometimes they're doing that just for their home cooking for their own use, and sometimes they're doing it for the state fair. Where they're wanting to enter this into a competition. And the level of intensity, the level of detail that goes into, say, baking a pie for the state fair is a whole different thing than baking a pie for dinner. And so that kind of spectrum between home cooking and state fair is one of the ways I've thought about essentially the decisions that need to be made related to rigor. And so you see in the home use, um, there's lots of situations where, again, like this foundation that I'm working with, a lot of what I do would be basically for home use. It would be working with the close stakeholders, working with the people, the actual staff. They're looking for quick and easy feedback. They want to understand what's going on and be able to respond in a quick way. And they're really wanting to lower the cost and lower the time involved. And those are all, to me, those are all appropriate decisions that they can make. And that's one, I would say, one end of the rigor spectrum. The state fair, say if the project is needing to serve distant stakeholders, say a donor that's far away, and you're needing to use, say, validated tools, that's going to involve higher cost and higher time. And so there's a spectrum there, and within the design process, deciding where on the rigor spectrum your ending would be an important decision. So so I'm seeing a couple questions. So I'll pause there before we get into the specific methods.
Okay, Kurt. So the first question is, does human-centered evaluation place a different emphasis on input from program staff compared to executive leaders? And how does that compare with developmental evaluation?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think in terms of how I have seen it as being more distinctive, I would say it places more emphasis on the subjective experience of the participants themselves. So, like wanting to understand, are the participants motivated, and if so, what is motivating them? And or are the participants demonstrating subjective changes that have real implications for the objective goals that we have? So there's a lot of say nonprofit international development organizations I've worked with that really want to spend a lot of time trying to increase a sense of agency in their participants, because they know if they don't have agency, they're not going to engage in other things. Well, that agency is closely related to hope, is closely related to a number of intangibles. So, understanding those intangible dimensions is a key piece of the evaluation. So I would say out of those two options, I would say neither. I would say it's especially focused on the participant experience. But then when it comes to the leaders, I would say it would really be looking at like who's the best qualified to answer the questions at hand. So sometimes it would be field staff if the questions are kind of ground level. Other times it would be the senior leaders if the questions were broader. So to me, it's the sampling there would follow other kinds of qualitative sampling kinds of perspectives.
Okay, thank you. And next up, how are you defining rigor?
That's an excellent question. I was not prepared for a pop quiz today. I think rigor to me is basically is the process that you're going through um, trustworthy, thorough, and essentially up to the professional standards, or is it slapdash, sloppy, um, and not really below professional standards. So that's not a clean definition, but I think to me, when I think of rigor, I'm thinking of high quality, intensity about the important details, thoughtfulness, uh, those kinds of things that contribute to professionalism. And so yeah, so that's, I guess, how I think of that. Does that looks like, is that Lisa that asked that? Does that help
Yep.
your help at all?
Yep. That was, listen, you got a thumbs up from her. So
Okay, all right, good.
I think you passed the pop quiz.
Uh, Great.
Uh-huh. All right. And the last question we have in the chat for right now is how does participatory evaluation fit in this?
That's a great question. I think it would be probably very similar. Maybe it needs to add another stream to how this would fit in. But yes, the idea of the participants being engaged is definitely an important dimension of this thinking. Yes, so excellent question, Miranda. Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Looks like that might have done it.
That covers it for now.
Great. Well, let's dive into some specific tools. So, how exactly, what are the tools and methods that we've used around this human-centered kind of approach? So one of the thoughts is actually starting at the theory of change. Again, from a traditional standpoint, the theory of change is telling the program story. So the inputs of the program, the activities of the program, the outputs of the program, and it ignores the human experience of the participants. And so one option for bringing a more human-centered approach to a theory of change that would just be really practical and simple would be to add a new row essentially to a logic model kind of theory of change to look at what's the participant experience at each of these categories. What are the inputs that your participants are coming in with? What are their felt needs or the barriers to thriving that they are experiencing and that would motivate their participation? What are the existing relationships that they're bringing to the program? These are key inputs that will influence the level of engagement and participation that they have. And as an adjunct professor, I have definitely observed when it comes to teaching, the engagement of the student isn't a supplemental kind of thing to the outcome. It is core to the outcome. If the student doesn't do any of the reading, doesn't come to any of the classes, doesn't engage at all, there will be no outcome, regardless of how brilliant my lectures are, or how thoroughly I've put together a syllabus. Right, the engagement is the key toward any kind of human outcome, any kind of human change, and so. Being very thoughtful about that is an important piece, I think, that is missing from traditional theories of change. So the inputs, what are the activities that the if we can think about the activities that the program is going to engage, we could think in terms of like market segmentation or audience segmentation. What are the different ways that we're going to develop relationships with the participants? There's a lot of important engagement and participation level questions that need to be thought through at the activities level. And then the outputs, again, when it comes to the human-centered side of this, the human engagement, there's a lot of different ways that we can count important outputs related to engagement or subjective experience. Like, are they visiting the website? How long are they spending on the website? how many relationships have we developed? What's the quality of those relationships? There's a lot of uh, important questions I think that should be added to a human-centered kind of theory of change. And then when it comes to outcomes, there's different perspectives here that I think could be really important. We could think of our outcomes in terms of essentially leading indicators to the visible objective kinds of more traditional kinds of outcomes. And this would, again, like I mentioned, in international development context, the a change, an increase in hope, an increase in a sense of agency would be a leading indicator, say, toward improving an economic situation or improving a health situation, and so that could be an important short-term or leading indicator. Um, at a medium level, we could look at change behavior or other more observable things, and then at the long term level, to me, that's where I would say that the sustained change within observable categories of interest would be. So anyway, so as a practical tool, I would say one option for a human centered approach to a theory of change would be to look at the participant experience and the subjective experience and engagement all the way through the process because that's an important and often neglected dimension. The second real practical approach that we found super helpful is what we call reflective dialogue, and this would be very similar to interviews or focus groups in terms of how it's organized and what it looks like, but the way that a reflective dialogue is designed is different in a number of important ways. And there's a couple of different flavors of reflective dialogue that I'd like to explain now. So reflective dialogue for the participants. This is really when you're thinking in terms of using the qualitative inquiry to benefit the participants themselves. And this hit me a number of years ago. I was flying to Bangladesh to work with an international development organization. They were wanting to develop a new evaluation approach for their participants, and it started sinking into me. It's like, no, wait a minute. I'm going to be developing protocols for interviews and engagement with between staff and participants. Why can't that benefit the participants themselves? Because when it comes to there's lots of ways where discussion and personal reflection actually contributes to my goals. This is the basis of coaching. A coach will have a discussion with, say, a player. They'll reflect on what just happened. They'll have a discussion about it. That discussion, that engagement with the coach, is how the player changes over time. It's the same thing with therapy or counseling. I've been to lots of both, and in a therapist's office, they ask questions. I think about it. I'm reflective on it, and then I have a dialogue with them. Doing that over time has had clear change in my life, and so the idea of reflective dialogue for participants is harnessing those same mechanisms to benefit the participant themselves. And so the idea here is that instead of the data collection being a clean data extraction, the idea is to design the interview or the focus group in a way that benefits the participants in the room themselves, and then also is collecting data. So it's effectively reversing the typical prioritization involved. And so this has been seen to we've had lots of good feedback that this actually works. So that's been so that's one very practical tool. The other thought is this idea of using a reflective dialogue kind of engagement with the staff. So this would be like, again, what I've done with this foundation. I collect the data that's been or I synthesize the data that's been collected over the past quarter and then engage in a discussion with the staff where they reflect on the data that's been collected and we talk about it, and that helps metabolize the data into useful insights for the organization. So the process of reflection and discussion together in a group environment that I'm facilitating contributes to metabolizing the data for the organization. So in this case, it's a reflective dialogue kind of approach, but it's really oriented toward benefiting the staff, and it's part of the life of the organization. So another method is this mixed methods approach called the 10 seeds technique. I used this in northern Uganda for a couple of weeks. It was developed by a researcher that has extensive work in international development. And the idea here is the data collection itself is mixed methods in that it's simultaneously collecting quantitative data and qualitative data. And so what you do is on like a piece of flip chart paper, you can draw boxes like this, and then give the participants 10 stones or seeds or anything that's kind of high visibility against the paper, and then ask them to allocate the seeds or the stones into the categories that reflect their own experience. So in this case, like to what extent did this program advance your goals, your own personal goals, or distract from your goals? And they could allocate the seeds accordingly. So it's like, well, it mostly in this case advanced my goals. There was some ways it distracted from my goals, and then as they're allocating the seeds, they're explaining their reasoning and explaining the what's going on behind that. And so you can collect qualitative data, very rich qualitative data, in simultaneous to this quantitative data, and it can be very valuable. And in a group context, so like in Uganda when I did it, there was it was effectively like a focus group. We gather under a tree. There'd be 20 some people. One person would be identified as the leader for each of the questions. They would allocate the seeds, and then there's just this very vigorous kind of discussion with the community around where it's like, no, you need to move another seed over because remember this situation, it wasn't as good as you're saying, and so there'd be vigorous discussion to get the allocation. And in the process of hearing that group discussion, we were able to collect lots of great qualitative data. So this is a very effective method, and again, especially in international development contexts. When it comes to the quantitative toolbox, there's four different options that I'd like to highlight. The first is that there's tons of validated tools that are already developed related to intangible subjective experience. There's applied there's whole journals from psychology of devoted to the measurement of relevant intangibles for us. So if you need a validated tool, it probably exists. And I have been collecting resources related to lots of different tools and have a database of 50 different tools, or 50 different resources pulled together. And if you're interested, please just send me your email, and I'll be happy to email that out. So anyway, so when it comes to the quantitative methodology, one option is there's tons of great validated tools already available, and we can help connect you to those. Secondly, the rash analysis and rash items is a very, very useful method. This unfortunately would require a whole separate workshop to talk about rash analysis, and Dr. Cates in the room there has led such a workshop at AEA a couple of years ago. But the idea here is that there's a very rigorous statistical analysis approach called rash analysis that is specifically designed to help identify, say, low, medium, and high levels of any kind of intangible dimension. And so this, as a statistical analysis approach, is a very useful way to get at a lot of the important subjective experience that we've been talking about here. And there's free packages that can help with this. This third one, the idea of a retrospective baseline, this is probably the most common favorite tool that I go to the most. And this is, as you see here, it's when you ask a rating level question twice, and you're having the participants give their rating for how they're feeling, or what their situation is right now, and then remembering back to a time, an earlier time, and giving their rating then. What a retrospective baseline is effectively doing is measuring the participants' own sense of change over time. And so, like in this case, you see right the level of hope that you felt before our program and now. So if I'm feeling like my level of hope now is at a 4, I'm feeling really pretty hopeful. But I know when I came in, I was really pretty miserable. I was not feeling hope at all. I was really kind of at a 2. What I'm saying is that I feel like my level of hope has increased by those 2 different categories, and that's a direct measure. And we've used this in lots of different scenarios, lots of different ways. A retrospective baseline gives participants the opportunity to tell you how they themselves feel like they've changed, and this has been very useful in lots of different situations. And finally, emotions, I think, can sometimes be relevant data. And in Bangladesh, that project I mentioned, we actually developed a tablet-based feedback system for children to be able to give regular feedback, and it had a series of emojis that very young children that didn't necessarily know how to read could readily identify, and could provide feedback related to how they're feeling. And the feedback that they provided was super valuable for their tutors, because often they were able to communicate things that the tutors were not aware of, and give the tutors opportunity to intervene and engage with them in a whole different way. So this idea of emotions as data is something that counselors and therapists often say. And the more I've thought of it, the more I've thought that they're actually right. Emotions are data, and it would be great to be able to harness that for our evaluative purposes. So really, the goal of all of these methods and tools is to use them to develop a living central nervous system that contributes value to the program in terms of the effectiveness of the program, and contributes to the lives of the participants, because we know that that feedback, reflection, discussion, these kinds of things actually help contribute to the outcomes that are often desired. So let me pause there. There's my email, kurt@effectx.com. If you're interested in receiving that database, I'm happy to email that out. And I'll pause now for questions.
All right, Kurt, we've had quite a few in the chat, so I'll go ahead and just start working our way down them.
Great.
Okay, so first up, are we looking at each task in our evaluation and saying where's the human engagement or experience represented in this? For example, in your evaluation questions, instrument planning, interpretation, or is there more of a whole overlay of human focus?
Yeah, that's a great. I guess to me, I think of it starting with an overlay. Like how is this program impacting and working with people. And then from that, basically operationalizing it into the different aspects that are going to be relevant to that situation and for that budget. So I guess like any kind of evaluation, there's real world kinds of constraints that need to be taken into consideration. So the depth and the variety of things that are engaged would be informed by those real world constraints.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next up, I appreciate the emphasis on participant experience and subjective perception along the process. I'm also wondering what variation in outcomes across different contexts. For example, even if two individuals report a positive experience, the downstream impact may be different. How would you recommend reflecting that variability within a theory of change?
That's awesome. Um, I think yeah, so yes, that's spot on. As a parent, I was especially the human-centered dimensions of raising kids to me is something I've come around a lot. Where you could have two kids get the same inputs, the same dinner, the same situation, and have radically different responses. And so yes, that is definitely the case. I think I would. In terms of the downstream implications, it's been rare that I've had a kind of engagement with an organization to have more of a longitudinal view like that. So I don't have as much practical. I don't have specific examples springing to mind, but I think if you could have a longitudinal kind of engagement, looking at the difference and then trying to identify what is it that's causing those differences could be very instructive. Is the difference caused by varying levels of engagement, or is the difference caused by other environmental concerns? And that I think could be very helpful data to strengthen the program moving forward. So yeah, it's an excellent point.
Okay, and this isn't so much a question, just some shared input, and so I'll go ahead and read that to you. Um, so this came from in the room. They love the idea of highlighting participant experience and expertise as an input slash resource in a program logic model, and the idea of leveraging qualitative data collection as an opportunity to deepen positive impact on participants, even if it muddies waters between an intervention and evaluation. And then there was a comment agreeing with that about seeing a lot of parallels here with the principles of equitable evaluation and using evaluation in a less extractive way that benefits participants.
Great.
Yeah. And then we also had Kristen, thank you for a helpful and insightful presentation. Just a question. Are there any contexts when you wouldn't recommend taking a human-centered approach?
Um, Well, there's lots of context where I haven't, and so I would say like if the evaluation is framed and if I'm responding to an RFP that's really requiring other things, then I basically can't. So I would say um, if the nature of the arrangement is already set up such that I can't, then I won't. But I will still nudge and suggest, like for the future, here's some ideas of how you might strengthen things moving forward. So I'd say yes, practically, I've definitely done lots of evaluations that aren't from this perspective, but that's because that's how they're framed. If I have the freedom to shape my own, then I definitely will always shape them with this kind of thinking.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kurt. That takes us to the end of our time. I just want to thank you for your presentation and everybody for attending today. It's great to see so much participation. And I hope that you'll be able to join us for our next presentation. Actually, on March 18th, we'll be joined by Aaron Cates. His presentation is titled Trauma-Informed Evaluation, Evidence, Theory, and Practice. I went ahead and put a registration link in the chat. You can also find it on our homepage, or if you've signed up for our email list, you'll be hearing from us. So we'll make sure to keep you aware of our upcoming presentations. And thank you again so much, Kurt, and thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. It's been a treat. Thank you. Bye bye.